Yo book nerds! I finished reading Peter and the Secret of Rundoon, which is the third book in the Peter and the Starcatchers series. I really enjoyed it. It did take quite a turn from what I was expecting, but I still really enjoyed this book too. If you haven't read the first two, there may be some spoilers for those two books as I talk about this book. So don't watch this unless you're okay with spoilers for the first two. So I'm going to try and explain this book, but it's going to be really hard without spoilers too. So I will give you a brief overview of what this is about, and then I will go into spoilers, but I will give you another warning before I go into spoilers for this book. So essentially this book is kind of broken into Peter gets captured and taken to Rundoon, and Rundoon is this city in the desert that the others control, and Molly figures out where he is and is going to try and save him. And meanwhile, back on the island, the mollusk tribe are fighting the scorpion tribe, who is a rival tribe that shows up on the island and tries to take over. So you have these two things going on at the same time. And I really wish that I had read this book when I was in Arizona, because Arizona is a desert and this book takes place in Rundoon in a desert. It would have been kind of fun if I had read this while I was in the desert. But oh well. So now I am going to get into some spoilers for this book. This book is progressively darker than the first two. Umbra returns. We thought he died at the end of the last book. He did not. He is back. And he is the one that had captured Peter and taken him to Rundoon. And there are some really gruesome scenes with Umbra that make this even darker. For example, he inhabits James's body and makes James scratch himself to the point of bleeding. That is very gruesome. Umbra talks about the destruction of the world, and he talks about how the battle between the others and the Starcatchers is like nothing compared to these other forces in the universe that are battling each other, which he is a part of. And that is the part of the story that I really did not expect. I did not expect like world destruction to be part of this. And so yeah, other dark things outside of Umbra, there's also a snake that has eaten children, and some of the children in this story have seen that snake eat children, and so just the thought of that is kind of grim. So there's a lot of grim things in here, especially when you consider that this is middle grade, so you have to keep that in mind. Like, this is pretty dark for middle grade, but it was very, very well written and very good. I really enjoyed the two plots, the story with Peter in Rundoon and then the story with the mollusk tribe on the island. And there were some parallels between the two that were very fun. The mollusk tribe has to kind of team up with the pirates to fight the scorpions. I really enjoyed that. Peter has to team up with Hook, who is also captured by Umbra, and team up with Hook to get free. And so the two parallels of these enemies coming together to fight another enemy, I really enjoyed that. And it's not all water under the bridge between Peter and Hook. There's still a lot of tension there, and that comes into play later too. But speaking of tension, I had talked about in book 2 the tension between the Lost Boys and Peter, and that really amps up in here. There is more tension between the Lost Boys and Peter. And actually we meet 6 more boys in this story. And those are the boys that J.M. Barrie names in his Peter Pan. And so I thought it was a very, very cool that the OG Lost Boys are now here in this story. And so, spoiler, the 4 Lost Boys that you begin with in this story, the tension between them and Peter has become so great, by the end they decide not to go back to the island with Peter. But the 6 Lost Boys that Peter finds in Rundoon, the ones that J.M. Barrie created in his story, those 6 go back with Peter to the island. So the Lost Boys are replaced. And I found that very interesting and sad, but I liked that. I really liked that because I didn't know where that tension was gonna go, and I just enjoy where that went because it went really deep into emotions and friendships and how complicated they can be and how people grow and change. And in Peter's case, he's not growing and changing, and so his friends and him grow apart. There were some fun little Easter eggs in this book as well. There are 2 ships in this book. The first ship is called the Michelle, which is one of the author's wife's name. So he named the ship in the story after his wife, which I think is adorable. The name of the second ship is in Dutch, and I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong. I believe it's called the De Vliegen. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, and I'm really sorry if you speak Dutch, but that translates to flying, or the flying ship. And that ship does end up flying later on. And so if you didn't look up or didn't know Dutch, you wouldn't know that that little Easter egg was there. But yeah, later on in the story, star stuff makes that ship fly. And I just found that hilarious, because a kid reading this probably isn't gonna realize that that's what that means in another language. There was one weird thing I had about this book. Chapter 14 was just weird, and I can't figure out why they did this. So they have this little tiny section at the beginning, and it's Molly's point of view, and then they have a break, and then they go into the chapter, and it's like back in time a few hours. And then at the end of the chapter, it's that beginning part of the chapter again. And they're both from Molly's point of view. So I really don't understand the point of it. I really don't. It was just kind of weird. And I can't figure out why they chose to do that for that one chapter. If one had been from one person's perspective and the other from another person's perspective, I could maybe allow that, but it just didn't, I didn't like it because they both were from Molly's point of view, and I don't get why we needed that twice in there. But overall, I really did enjoy this book. I really thought it was good. This series was originally supposed to be a trilogy, and so this was supposed to be the last book. And so the other 2 books were not planned, and they came along later. And so I really liked this, and I thought it ended perfectly. It ended as the perfect lead-in to the original Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. And so like, I don't know how I feel after reading this, knowing that there's 2 more books. Because I really like that Dave Barry and Ridley Pearson didn't rewrite their own version of J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan. And so now I'm afraid, going into the next 2 books, I'm afraid that they're gonna ruin it. I don't know. I did start the next one already, which is Peter and the Sword of Mercy. I'm about 130 pages into it, and so far they haven't ruined it. I'm just nervous though reading this. I feel like they will now write their own version of J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan, when before they didn't. So before, their stories were like a big nod to J.M. Barrie and were explaining J.M. Barrie's story. But now I'm afraid they're going to write their own version of the Peter Pan story, and Peter Pan and Wendy, and I don't like that as much. I really liked that they left J.M. Barrie's there and just like explained how to get there, but I don't know. I don't really know how else to explain it, but I hope that they don't now just overwrite J.M. Barrie, because J.M. Barrie was their whole inspiration for the first 3 books. And so, I don't know. I don't know how I feel. I'm not going to tell you what has happened so far in this book. I'll save that for when I do a book review on this, because I don't want to jump the gun on how I'm feeling. But yeah, I don't really know where this is going to go, and I hope that it proves me wrong. I hope that these next 2 books don't disappoint me, because I really, really enjoyed the first 3. But I guess time will tell. So if you read Peter and the Secret of Rundoon, let me know what you thought of it in the comments. And if you've read Peter and the Sword of Mercy. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this as well, but don't give me any spoilers because I don't want to know until I've read it. I don't want to know what's going to happen. I hope you guys are having a great week. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And head over to my Facebook if you'd like some more content from me throughout the week. Otherwise, I will see you guys next Monday. Thanks for talking books with me.